So next we are starting with clusteral sampling. So clusteral sampling, here the research divides a population into smaller groups known as cluster. So here what we are going to do is we are going to divide the whole population into small groups or into small divided groups. Here they are called as clusters. So clusters means a small group that has been drawn out of the population in an research or in a method of sampling. So here, what does a cluster do? The cluster here is going to bring out the sample on whom we are going to conduct research, or it is going to define who our target population is, on whom we are going to conduct research and with whom we are going to bring out the results. So how this clusteral sampling is going to work? The clusteral sampling is most widely used in geographically dispersed areas. Because it is going to give you the result that is similar when you have a people from the same geographical areas or the dispersed areas. So the cluster sampling is going to make sure that your small groups gives you a result that can be generalized to an entire population or the overall group. Researchers usually use pre-existing units such as schools or cities such as their cluster. Here, the schools or cities, as I said, they are working on geographically dispersed areas. They usually make their source as schools or cities as their cluster sampling source, because it is going to give them the data they are required or the data they are looking for under the cluster sampling method. So under cluster sampling method, we are going to collect data like age, sex, location, all this. So how to cluster a sample? So how to form a cluster sample? So it's same. You are going to define the population, then you are going to divide into clusters, then you are going to select the cluster to use as your sample, then you are going to collect the data from the sample. So all this is one side. What are the unique things when it comes to cluster sampling? I'll tell you about that. It's step 2 that is different from when it comes to simple random. Here we are going to divide the sample into clusters, whereas in the previous method we were going to decide on who our population or the sample are going to be based on the random method, but here we are going to divide it based on the clusters. We are going to divide the sample into clusters. So to explain this process, I have taken up an example which is going to explain you about all the 4 steps that I have previously mentioned. So the first one is you are interested in an you are going to conduct an interested average reading level of all the 7th graders in your city. You are going to create interest of reading with all the 7th graders in the city. So can you go to each and individual and collect a data from the 7th grader who is in the city? It is highly impossible. So what you will do, so you can do one thing. What is that? You are going to spread across the city to collect the data, but which is the source you are going to use? The source you are going to use will be schools, because when you enter the school, you will have a complete access over the grade data of all the 7th graders in the city. When you collect the data of all the schools in the city, you will have all the data of 7th graders who are studying in the city. Because instead of going and collecting data from the individual, it will be more simple to collect data from schools, because you have one source and you can collect more information. So schools and collect the data from a subset of this. So who are the subset? So school is the main set here. 7th graders are the subset. So from there you are going to collect the data. You thus decided to use the cluster sampling method. So based on this question, you are going to use the cluster sampling method. So as I said, we have 4 steps in this, and I have taken an example here that we are going to conduct interest of average readers who are in the 7th graders. So here we have to define the population. As I said, the population definition remains different from time to time, and it's based on the situation. So under research methodology, it's characteristics. So my characteristics of research here is seventh graders. I am going to select the seventh graders who are studying seventh standard in the school. They are my target population here. So I'm going to select my target population as seventh graders, and I'll be choosing them for my entire research. They'll be my population. So here I have to make sure my size, what is the population size I am going to choose. That is also important, whether it's 100, 200, but I don't know population size here because it's cluster sampling. I have an whole population here. It is whole population. Still, I don't know the numbers. So my population here is simply defined as seventh graders. It's seventh graders. So next we are going to divide the samples that I have collected into clusters. So I'll explain this with an example. Each clusters, 1 second. Each cluster population should be as diverse as possible. Yes, your population or your cluster population should be diversified. Your cluster population should be diversified because you want every potential characteristics. You want to bring out the every potential characteristics possible from your population to represent the each cluster. You should bring out the each specified diversified characteristics or the every potential characteristics possible from your population in the research to represent the each cluster. So your each cluster population should be diversified as much as possible. Each cluster should have a similar distribution of characteristics. Each cluster should have a similar distribution of characteristics such as distribution of population. So what is the similar distribution mean? So similar distribution is nothing but homogeneous characteristics. They should have the characteristics that match with their category or the cluster. You are going to group them based on homogeneous characteristics here, or you're going to create a cluster based on the homogeneous characters they are possessing. Next, you are going to take together the cluster should cover the entire population. So whatever you have taken, the population, it should cover the entire population. The whole cluster you are choosing should cover the entire characteristics of the population, should cover the entire taste of the population. There should not be any overlap between the clusters. That is, the same people shouldn't repeat. The same people shouldn't repeat in more than one cluster. Okay, that is very, very important because duplication of data may happen in the research. So for that, what you will do, you should make sure that there is no overlap between the clusters. The next, your clusters of 7th grade, graders. Okay, this is an example for divide the cluster. I'm saying here, your cluster the 7th grade by the school they attend. So here what we are going to do, we are going to divide, or we are going to cluster the small group or one small group based on the school they attend, as you can see here. See, it is the whole population. Okay, and you're going to divide the whole population based on the school they are going to attend, So what is this advantage of doing this? So by this, we can make sure that there is no overlapping of the data, because one student can study in one school only. See, this is what I was trying to say. Each student attends only one school. So that was an example for the cluster. So by dividing this, what is the advantage we are going to get? The advantage will be we will have an organized cluster. We are going to cluster based on the characteristics based on the sector they are working in. So based on that, we will have a cluster based on their characteristics. And one more thing is, it will be easy for our analysis. While we are making an analysis, it will be easy for us because we are going to take out this cluster group which we want for the analysis. There will be less time consuming in the analysis. So randomly select this cluster to use as your sample. So here the random, simple random method comes into existence. Even though we are having clusters here, we are going to choose them randomly. So it is going to imitate. It is going to imitate. It is going to imitate simple random. It is going to imitate simple random sampling, which is going to give you a validated results, which is going to give you an validated results. So how this randomly selected clusters are going to used? This randomly selected clusters are going to be used in the research as a mini representation of large population. It is going to be used as a mini representation of a larger population. And it also helps us to form a sample. It is also helps us to form a sample without a bias, and it helps us to even form a validated results. So next, in the fourth step, we are going to collect a data. We are going to collect a data from the sample. From the sample, you test the reading levels. You are going to test the reading levels of every seventh grader, in the schools that were randomly selected. So we have collected we have defined the population, we have divided the cluster, then we have analyzed the sample of this cluster. So what is the next step? So the next step here is collection of data. So what you will do, as soon as you have this cluster sample, you will go visit this cluster sample area and you are going to collect the data from the each cluster sample you have selected. That is from the each seventh grader. So the seventh grader is the population we have. So we are going to collect data from each seventh grader in the school that were randomly selected for your sample, which has already been selected at the early stage. So up next we have merits. So what are the merits we have here? So the merits we have here is, it may be a good representative of a population. It is going to be a good representative of a population where you are going to represent the entire population using cluster method by dividing them. One second. You are going to divide this population. This population will be divided into subset. That can be A and B. So how does this going to represent the population? Say it is going to represent the population, the entire population, by using structure method. That's one. And it is easy method. I'll tell you how it is easy method. It is easy method because it avoids overlap. It avoids overlap. It avoids overlap. It avoids overlap, and it also avoids the duplication of the data here. It also avoids the duplication of data. Then it has an economical method. It is an economical method. It is an economical method because it saves our time. It saves our time. It saves our time, and it is also going to save. Our cost. Our cost going to be involved in the research. As I said, when we choose a sample size with the requirement we have, it is going to save our time and cost. It is going to save our time and cost because we are not going to choose the too much of big sample size or too much of small sample size when we have a proper technique of choosing a sample size here. So because of this, we are going to save time and we are going to save cost of involving or using a more sample size here. So it is an economical method. It is practicable and highly applicable in education. So this was the reason. So this was the reason I took an education field as an example. If we want to study anything related to education, we usually prefer what do you say, cluster sampling method, because it is going to give you an accurate results. It is going to give you an accurate results over everything you are going to bring out, because they are be formed in the structural form. As I said, in an education institute, it is important that uh, what do you say, the data has to be qualitative, and it should be a quantifiable data too. Even it has a quality, then it should also be quantitative, because it has an n number of functions. It has an n number of functions to deal with. So they need an accurate data for an educational institute to predict the future or to predict the trends. So they use cluster sampling because it divides the whole population into a small cluster based on the characteristics or based on the categories, and it is going to give them an additional or accurate results. So based on observations, can be used for interferential purpose. So cluster sampling is not free from errors. Even cluster sampling can have errors. I'll tell you how. When you have selected a seventh grader class example, and there will be a chances, that one or two students can be absent for the class on that day. So at that time, your sample size is going to get affected, and it is not going to give you the accurate result you were predicted or expected. It is not comprehensive. It is not a comprehensive study. It is just a study that you are going to do with a direct examples and direct approach to the data, to be in simple.